And welcome back to Flashpoints. I'm Bob Orr. Joining me, Juan Zarate. He's our national security analyst. Juan, good to see you again.
Bob, pleasure to be with you.
So the shoot down of the airplane and the Israeli ground incursion, those have dominated the headlines. But there's other big stuff going on that we need to stay focused on.
Yeah.
Let's talk about ISIS.
We've been talking about the two crises. There's multiple crises. ISIS, this terrorist group, the marauders on the march in Iraq and Syria, continue their offensive. They've taken control of most of the oil fields in Syria, are beginning to pressure the moderate forces in Syria, the rebels that we actually support. Aleppo itself is under siege by both the regime and ISIS. So in Syria, they're ensconcing themselves, growing more powerful. And in Iraq, they're growing more powerful as well. They've now forced all of the Christians in Mosul out. The Christians have been part of the history of that region for 2,000 years. They're now gone. They've repulsed the Iraqi military's offensive in Tikrit, and so they've been able to fight back. And so they're holding territory, expanding it. And this is a movement that continues to be on the march with an Iraqi military that hasn't demonstrated an ability to dislodge them. And so this is a real problem.
And it seems like at this point the world really has just so many problems it's hard to keep track of. What else is on your mind? Well,
you also have the problem in Libya, which we haven't been focusing too much on, but you have continued fighting there with the dissolution of in essence, the government and stability in that country. All sorts of foreign workers, UN being evacuated. The airport's been under siege now, under attack for days with aircraft destroyed. And so commercial traffic in and out is gone. You had General Hiftar continuing his assault. He's more of a kind of a strongman type who's been going after the Islamists and the extremists. And then you have extremists flowing back into Libya. They've already had a population there of al-Qaeda types who've been fighting. Now more coming back into Libya to fight General Hiftar and to be part of that environment. So Libya is burning as we speak. The last thing, Bob, is West Africa. Remember Boko Haram, which got a lot of attention when they kidnapped the schoolgirls.
And they're still missing.
The girls are still missing. They haven't been found. Boko Haram's still out there. They're taking more hostages. And their allies in al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb in North Africa continue to try to harass and assault in places like Mali. They just killed a French soldier the other day. And the French are trying to reassemble their forces in the region because the French realize that there's a long-term battle underway and they're going to have to lead the charge.
Let me ask you this. When we get focused, when the world gets focused on a crisis like the shoot down of the plane or the Israeli-Hamas flare in Gaza, do the terrorists take note of that? Do they say, hey, we might have an opening here because people are not watching us?
Yeah, they take notice in a couple ways. One, I think they recognize that attention isn't on them, so things like the moral opprobrium of the world on Boko Haram, lessens, right? So there's less pressure on them, and so they notice that. They also, in a perverse way, like attention, right? And so in some cases, like with North Korea, we've seen this in the past, when attention is elsewhere, they may do something provocative.
You'll shoot off a missile.
Shoot off a missile or do something dramatic to get attention, to get donor attention in the case of terrorists. And so it plays both ways. But without a doubt, I think world attention these days is so fickle, and we thrash from one crisis to another, that it's interesting when you've got multiple crises going on where our attention lies. Obviously, we've got to focus on the downing of the Malaysian aircraft. You've got to look at what's happening with Israel and Gaza. But these other issues are festering, and they continue to threaten us and to be crises.
And as we wrap this up, I'm going to ask you a question people ask me now.
Yeah.
Do you remember a time recently where we've had this many problems in so many places? It just seems like we're overwhelmed.
It feels like mass dislocation, right? It feels like there aren't the structures, mechanisms to actually contain and manage these different crises. I think there have been other periods. 1979, the world was awash with revolution. Yep. Our embassies taken over in Pakistan and in Iran, the Russian invasion of Afghanistan. So there have been periods. I think there's a conceit of chronology often around our sense of complexity and crises. But it doesn't feel like anyone has a handle on what's happening, and there are no institutions or leaders that seem to be driving solutions. And I think that's really what people are pining for, and the criticism, I think, of the Obama administration is, where is the quarterback? Where is the leadership to deal with these various crises at a time, frankly, when the American population feels like retreating from the world?
The president faces a very full agenda, no doubt about it.
That's right. Thank you,
Juan,
Bob.
thanks. And thanks to you for watching Flashpoints. I'm Bob Orr. We'll see you next time.